Hello everyone, welcome to STEM with Chantel.
I'm Chantel, and this is Ty.
All right, so this was the Southwest Library. This is on Dixie Highway in Southwest Louisville. And this was literally just off the page to the right is a Meijer, your just conventional Meijer store, giant parking lot, giant big box store. And this was a property that had a retention basin for the Meijer to collect several of the different properties worth of stormwater on it and then take it off site. And what we found was this ended up being a point in Louisville that has unbelievably porous soil. This used to be riverbed, however many thousands and millions of years ago. And so below the top 15, 20 feet of soil is actually just almost solid sand. And so rather than just trying to collect rainwater and take it off to the sewer in an area that has sewer flooding issues, we actually embrace the opportunity of that retention basin to create what instead is now an infiltration basin. So the water you see there is sometimes there, it's sometimes not. That's truly showing where the water table is in this whole community. And so below, we basically carved this canyon into the middle of the parking lot to kind of put on display how the water was being conveyed from the building. So water is basically collected on that roof, connected by pipe into this retention basin. And then the water is able to sink into the ground at the rate of about 30 inches per hour, which is unbelievable. That's a crazy amount of water to be able to soak into the ground. And what you see here is still a suburban parking lot, but it's not any suburban parking lot that most people would be used to seeing. We wanted to basically make this a very special place without necessarily putting the parking somewhere crazy, trying to put it underground or on the roof or anything wild. This is still an asphalt parking lot with painted stripes, but by adding that basin, by adding that bridge, you'll actually see people parking further from the front door than they otherwise would. And I mean, what suburban parking lot have you ever been in where people are actually going out of their way to park further from the front door? Obviously, the facade is pretty wild. This is actually stainless steel that we used for this facade, and it's got a coating on it. What was really fun about this was this is based on a conversation that we had amongst the owner, the director of the library here in Louisville, his project manager, who happened to be an architect, and then the landscape architect and two architects. And we got talking about how the kind of wonder and fun that children have, and how the sense of imagination that's just pretty much on display for kids almost all the time could manifest itself in a building. And he got talking, the director did one day, about how fun it is to see a child, just play in an imaginative way beneath the tablecloth draped over a table. Simplest thing in the world. And so the entire building became this metaphor for how you could basically peel back the curtain and reveal the activity and the excitement happening inside the building. So that's what you're seeing here, are these kind of metaphorical metal shrouds that peel back and reveal the activity happening inside the building. This was the first of these 40,000 square foot buildings. And the interesting thing was we did not expect to have a lot of staffing to be able to support a building this big. And so there are times when this building is being operated, this 40,000 square foot library is being operated by only about 7 librarians. It was imperative for us to have good sight lines so that the staff were not inundated with the need to just constantly be circulating around the space to maintain order and keep things under control. And so the sight lines are set up that from the service point, they can see basically down every single aisle in the entire building from that one point of view. And then all of the enclosures, all the rooms that are in the space are all completely glass. So that even though they are an impediment to walking, they're not an impediment to sight. And then all the fun stuff that gives the interior character happens overhead, so that you still have a lot of character, but it's not blocking the functionality of the librarians being able to serve the patrons. This one's a few miles away from that first one, and this instead was the one that was built in the middle of a forest. So we were really fortunate to have these existing trees, and rather than just mow them down, which was really sad going into it knowing that the site was fully forested, we took the opportunity to really make the trees a part of the story on every side of the building. So what you see here, I'll pull this guy up because I think it's probably the most telling view, is that to north of the building, we left over an acre of trees completely untouched. The undergrowth is still there. It's a pristine, untouched forest and will be forever. Where the building was, obviously, we had to carve out those trees, but we actually harvested a lot of the biggest trees on the site and milled them into the wood features that are in the building. So again, a story to tell. Even though the trees were gone, we were able to capitalize on the wood that they produced to make the building more beautiful. And then this is actually a photo in the middle of the parking lot. There's parking on all sides of you, but by pulling the parking lot apart and leaving these mature trees in the middle of the parking lot and creating these spots where people could stop, perhaps have a picnic. We saw contractors out here when they were building the building just taking their lunches here because it was a shaded spot right next to the building. It was always just really lovely to be there. Since we cleared out the undergrowth, the wind can, the breeze can blow through this area. It certainly is open enough that you don't feel unsafe here. And it's just another unexpected experience that hopefully, and we've seen this just like with the bridge, people are parking as far away from the front door as possible so they can actually walk through the forest to get to the front door. And that's what's been really fun about this, is being able to capitalize on the beauty of an existing site and really, in a lot of ways, I know it sounds a little silly, but to listen to our sites and let them inspire the design solutions that we ultimately come up with. So that when you walk in, this is kind of it's almost the first impression view you get. Across the way from the front door is uninterrupted forest. So you can see there off in the distance, this big picture window and then those high windows across the entire north facade, and it's just solid trees. So the building itself is very neutral, very, very quiet, very reflective. We wanted to have the entire building be daylit. And so even though it's a massive interior, we have daylight basically flooding most of the spaces, and the lighting dims down to almost off pretty much all the time during the day. But essentially the trees lured you to the perimeter of the building so that you could experience these fun moments next to nature. So this is just that kind of cross view where you can see that we've got a maker space off in the distance. That kind of triangular space off the far end is our maker space here. We were really fortunate to have a council person here in Louisville that invested in an arts program. So we actually have artists come in. She initially had thought it would be for a piece of art that would hang in space, which is nice. It's great to have art in spaces, to be sure, but we literally didn't have any flat walls in this building, so art in the space was going to be a bit of a trick. But by instead creating an arts program, this is something that's living. This is something that's engaging. This is something that kind of is the spirit of where libraries are going today, which is more hands-on learning, more collaboration, more of what is true and tangible in a lot of ways, that you can basically gain knowledge and apply knowledge in the same place. And the library is that focal point where these things can happen. Keep in mind, all three of these had the exact same space program, but the sites were so drastically different that it just truly forced our hands in a lot of ways to make the response, the design solution, something completely different. So this is kind of the very best shot of this third one, which is the most recent one that opened. And this guy, unlike the other two, which were built on 4.5 acre sites, this one happened to be on the property of one of the most beautiful historic homes in all of Louisville. And when they had created basically a suburban office park around the perimeter of this site, they left 13 acres of the original kind of formal front yard for that historic home untouched. And so we were able to take this building, which was much, much larger than the historic home, and push it to the far end of the property, so that now on either end, rather than looking at a parking lot, which was what was behind this building that you see right here, now you have this conversation that's going back and forth between this historic home and this new library. And then there were details in the library that pick up on the scale and proportion of that building. But, you know, to that question you had asked earlier about what has changed in the last 50 years, this is, you know, a great example of like several strategies that were apparent 50 years ago: shading glass from harsh sun. So that's why you have this deep overhang. This is the south side of the building. So during the day, the sun is overhead. It's being shaded from the glass during the summertime. But in the wintertime, the sun's at a lower angle, and it actually comes into the building to help us heat the building in the cooler months. So it was really valuable to us to kind of set the parameters of that canopy so that it could actually function in a way that was both functional in terms of giving this outdoor space outside our children's collection, but then also helping with the performance of the building by shading it in the summertime and letting the sun in the wintertime. It was really important to our director that this be a place where the collection was irresistible. And when you have a building whose purpose is to have 100,000 plus pieces of content, that can be tough. You know, it can be something that approximates a warehouse for books. And that's the last thing we wanted to have this feel like. We wanted this to be open and inviting and compelling, so that people really did have the motivation to wander to the far corners of the space, to find a place in this building that was most comfortable to them, where they either had the right amount of daylight or had the right view. And so even the bookcases in this project lent to that experience. We had this view, and you can see the historic home off here on the right side. That's basically right on axis when you first walk in. So that conversation between our building and that building was clear from the moment you walked into the building. But once you start to engage with the library, what you see here on the left are these face-out book stacks that are illuminated directly, so that even in the evening, the materials actually kind of glow. And it's all face out. All the shelves are only 2 inches deep, so even if they wanted to put them spine out, they couldn't. So that people are encouraged to wander, to explore, to browse. And this is all of the new releases, the high volume, high circulation materials, so that people are really getting to engage with the stuff that's the most exciting that the library has to offer. And this collection is always changing, for better or worse. I feel bad for the librarians that have to keep stocking it, but that collection is just always churning, so that, again, people are immediately engaged in the materials, and hopefully lures them to engage with the building as well.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more STEM with Chantel videos, check out this playlist. If you want to know when JCPL puts out more content, click the subscribe button and the notification bell.